This episode of the Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Acorn 30.
Wait, that's our company.
Right. Although some people think we're a bit nuts, we work with businesses to help them grow into mighty oaks through creative campaigns, amazing websites, and funky branding. Check us out at acorn30.com. On this episode, Echo versus Alexa, Apple leads in voice, shopping with voice, and restaurants doubling down on voice.
Creativity sells. Applying the right creative at the right time is the recipe for great marketing. The Marketing Podcast looks at marketing news and finds the secret ingredients that make great marketing.
Hi, welcome to the Marketing Podcast. I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
How you doing, Brendan?
I'm very loud.
I'm sorry.
It'll be
Shush.
okay.
Shall we whisper?
I'll whisper.
It's a hot one. We are loving
My
summer.
goodness. So hot. I don't like summer.
I like summer.
Nope.
Tell me, I have a question for you. We're talking about voice today, and I know that you were so excited about your Google
Mini.
Mini. We brought it in. We talked about it. You played with it. Is it just as exciting for you? Still? How many more do you have?
I'm not allowed to buy any more right now.
Okay.
That's a
Do you
wife.
have
That's a wife directive.
Do you have
right
several?
There. No, I've just
Just
got the
got
one.
the one,
But I
okay.
mean, both of our phones double. Like anything the Mini can do, our phone can do better.
Sure.
So there's that. But the thing that's most interesting for me is that one of the first words for my children is Google.
Oh, great.
Like it literally has replaced.
Mom and dad?
No. The mom and dad are still the first words. But as soon as they get interested in the television, it's the remote for our television.
That's very cool.
It's how you put things on our television.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And scary all at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that you are loving it. We're talking all about voice today, and I want to start with an article that's coming out of Strategy Analytics that says Amazon's share of smart speaker shipments fell to 41% from 76% last year. So
Interesting.
you have one, but you haven't bought more, is what it comes down to. And I know you've got
I have a
the
Google.
Google as
Yeah.
opposed to the Echo, and this is very Echo focused.
And I think this is the idea that Google's closing the gap, and I think I know why that might be.
Right.
They had a half off promotion on the minis, which is why I bought one.
At Christmas time.
At Christmas time.
I recall.
And it standed for like a long time, and all I could think was, hey, this is just Google trying to
Yeah,
get as
but
many
Amazon sold
into
those
homes.
little sold
dots.
those little dots for super cheap. Amazon Prime Day, they discounted them yet again. So they're doing that. This study that these guys did basically says that Amazon's global share of smart speaker shipments fell in Q2 2018 from 76% a year earlier. Now, I also want to think that any of those early adopters would have bought them in year one, and other people who aren't too sure haven't quite adopted that technology yet. So you're going to get a little bit of stagnant sales because everybody who has one,
Yep.
right? Or who is going
Yep.
to invest early in
Now,
it.
the mini and the dot really lend themselves to like one in every room.
Right,
you
you're
know?
right. Now, Google boosted its share to 28% from 16% in the same period.
I don't think they were selling. They only had the Google Home before that anyways.
You're right.
So it's not like they had many offerings.
Yeah, but they are closing the gap.
Yeah.
And the research firm estimated that device makers combined shipped nearly 12 million smart speakers just in Q2 of this year, about 8 million more than a year ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it is interesting that, more and more people, Amazon has obviously helped to pioneer the market for smart speakers with the Echo devices. But Strategy Analytics estimates show that the e-commerce giant isn't invulnerable to the advances of other device makers like the Google. And of course, Apple kind of have been trying to crack into this too. And we've got another story on that later on, but it's still a new market, and Amazon is a titan in many, many areas, but Google is closing that gap.
What I think's really cool about the market is it is a low barrier of entry for businesses.
You're right.
Like you still have to hire a developer like you would for an app or a website, but we're not talking the level of development required to build either of those things.
Right.
Because it's voice. There's no UI.
I think more importantly, even if you're not developing in this platform, you need to, as a business owner, recognize that your customers are using voice more now than ever before, even if it's Siri in their phone. And search engine optimization, SEO for voice, is much more conversational now than it ever has been. And with location-based technology, I mean, if you search skiing in, in your town versus my town, you're going to get completely different results. And 5 or 10 years ago, if you were searching skiing on the internet, you would have to search skiing locations available in XYZ community. But now you can just say, "Hey, assistant," I won't light up.
Set an alarm for 5 a.m.
Yeah. No, but "Hey, assistant, where can I go skiing?" And furthermore, from an SEO perspective, Google search particularly now knows if you're on your mobile versus your desktop. So if you search skiing, they're probably going to be on your mobile. Google knows that you're probably looking for something that's within an immediate area because you're trying to find that ski lodge that you're on your way to, versus at your desktop where you're maybe trying to search out a ski trip and you're planning it. So voice is really important. It's more conversational in developing those search strings. 10 years ago, if you searched skiing, people would be like, just don't even know how to Google. Like that's, and it would be difficult to get the results that you want. But now with the localization and with the use of voice, these searches are coming up. So when you're doing SEO on your website, it's important that you're thinking about what is the intent of the search when somebody is searching for your business. And it's that whole context of what it is that they're looking for.
I was going to say too, I think the other side, so for the business, as the smart homes pick up, the voice will be more and more important.
Sure.
Like our primary use is the television, and that's what's made it worthwhile.
Yeah, but turning
house.
Lights on and off for security systems.
Exactly. That'll become like the main reason someone puts a speaker in their house if they already haven't.
It's like that moment you get totally cozy in bed and you realize somebody left the kitchen light on.
Yeah.
Right? And you just want to be able to say, "Hey, assistant, turn off my kitchen light." As opposed to me now with my husband saying, "Well, you left it on."
Hey,
well,
assistant.
I was the last one in the...
Hey, assistant.
Hey, assistant, nudge, nudge. I know you're about to fall asleep, but I'm comfortable.
Well, even to the point, like the smart plugs are connected. All of those things are connected. So I feel like it's the battle of the ecosystems, so to speak. Alexa and Amazon's trying to build a voice ecosystem, and Google is as well, and Apple is as well, and there are other voice assistants, but I feel like they're not as ecosystem centric. So it's turning into that battle, and it's, who do you go with? What do you do? Those questions still can't be answered.
Right. And that's actually a good segue into the next article, which actually came out of the Peterborough Examiner through the Canadian press, actually. But Siri is winning the battle of the virtual assistants. Speaking of battles.
Interesting.
Canadian poll finds Apple tops Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. So in the heated battle between them all to get consumers hooked on their virtual assistants, Siri seems to be enjoying the lead. So just shy of 40% of Canadian adults recently used a virtual assistant, being Siri, according to a report from Media Technology Monitor.
I know why this is.
Why?
Market share of the mobile devices.
Well, Siri was the first.
Mm-hmm. But it's
first to market.
But when you look at Google and you look at Amazon and Apple, Amazon doesn't have phones. They've got their Fire phones, but no one knows anything about them, which saves Alexa for basically Alexa devices.
Right.
Where now you've got Google and you've got Apple. Google has fragmentation in their mobile manufacturers, and Bixby is one of the voice assistants from Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Google Assistant, and there's other ones, but they're not as popular, to the point where there's even Android phones that are trying to build Alexa into them.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess would be is if we all bought an Apple or a Google phone or an Alexa phone, these numbers would be different.
Right. Yeah, and it does say that Alexa was a little slow coming into Canada. So these are Canadian stats.
That's true too.
Right?
Yeah.
So in other areas, namely the United States, Alexa was a little bit earlier to market, but a little delayed. But of course, as we've already talked about, they've been super competitive with the pricing of their hardware, the dots and other devices for in-home, and they are catching up. So Apple's not vulnerable to this.
I challenge anyone who's using Siri to use Google Assistant for the same tasks.
So I've done both.
Yeah.
Challenge has been accepted, and I still, just for ease,
On
truly
your phone.
on my phone,
Yeah.
because I basically have to ask Siri to open up my Google Assistant so that I can tell Google Assistant to
that's
do
'cause you're
something
on
for me, because I have
yeah.
an iOS device. Siri has, back in the early days with my first iPhone, I remember Siri and I would get into very heated arguments because Siri couldn't understand the most simplest of tasks, like to open a particular app or something. And it was like, have I trained my Siri wrong? Why do you not understand me, you dummy? Now that voice technology is a little bit faster, and I can now, when I'm dictating, say, a text or a note to send somebody, I can go much longer and get it. And Siri get it correct. Whereas before you could barely say 5 words without Siri like, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. It's like, ugh. So I find Google Assistant when I try and use it, maybe it's because I'm still not that proficient in all of the things that Google Assistant can do. I've only found a few, I don't know if they're called applets or
The actions.
actions.
Yeah.
So I haven't really played a lot with it,
Yeah.
but I still always default to Siri.
Well, no, on your phone, I would expect you to. I guess the challenge is more if you're doing like looking up the movie tickets and buying the movie tickets, try it on an Apple and try it on an Android using the assistants.
Right.
And from what I've seen and what I've read, Google, because they brought their knowledge base from the Google search into their voice assistant, is better equipped at answering questions.
Right.
And that's not because they can't recognize your voice or they can't
'Cause Google
search a
has the
database.
database.
It's just that Google's got this crazy database to the point where even like location information is like, they've got Google Maps for that. They've got, and
Yep.
so it's a little scary, but at the same time, it's going to be hard to compete with the
Google
search
has been
engine.
Google for far too
Exactly.
long, and
Yeah.
they just have so much more core data. Yeah. It's funny you mention buying, say, movie tickets by either platform, because our next article is coming out of HubSpot and is talking about voice shopping. And it's almost being so cheeky to say that it's a thing of the past. Like it's come and gone, and it's like we're moving on because it works so well, right? So voice shopping usage, asking users just across the US and the UK, have you ever used a smart speaker to make a purchase? And on average, about half of the respondents answered no, but 20% also indicated that they don't own a smart speaker to begin with,
Right.
right? So those who own smart speakers are using them for making purchases. And then they went in further to say, well, how are those smart speakers being used? Those same users, what do you use it for the most? And over half of the respondents, those who do use them, I should say this, is checking the weather, which isn't really cutting edge. But then secondly, and that's probably what I use Google Assistant for
Interesting.
most. When I wake up in the morning, I kind of have a bunch of little triggers that I run it through. It's like, tell me the weather, tell me my horoscope, tell me my schedule. And it just runs down, play my favorite podcast in the morning. But voice shopping came in second of that for those who are using their voice assistant. So
Weird. I've never bought anything.
really,
What I have done is purchased on my phone and cast to the TV like a movie from Google Play, and then controlled it through the smart speaker because
Right.
it's all connected.
right.
But I've never asked it to buy something for me.
Right. Right. So this particular study is like, well, what could these numbers mean? And they're saying that, potentially there's a low perceived value of smart speakers, but it could also be an instance of slow market penetration and adoption. So it kind of contradicts what we've already spoke about with the articles. But like many other instances of emerging technology, when something is new, it may seem cost prohibitive and not worth the price tag. So the HomePod, Apple's Siri-powered smart speaker, for example, which was the last one to the market, it seems, it's currently priced around $350. And, how do you compare that to the Echo or Google Home, where you can get those dots and minis for $50? So, ownership is just now starting to peak with about 18% of U.S. adults currently owning a smart speaker. So it's still pretty low overall. I mean, still 18% of the free market, of the U.S. market
Everybody.
is a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Nearly 3/4 of them have only owned them for a year. So it's still an upward growth trend. And for home shopping purposes, people are just reluctant to actually buy something, but quote, add an item to your shopping list is something that people are using their voice assistants for more and more.
I have seen that too, where you can just say, "Hey, assistant, put this on my list," and then when you go into the store, it's the list's there and ready to go.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And we're just probably, according to this HubSpot article, we're just kind of entering into the mainstream owners. The past year and earlier would be where you're talking about those early adopters, right? So people who are like into the latest gadgetry, raced out and bought one a year ago, and now we're just starting to get into kind of more of that mainstream use. But the question is, could it be that with the growth of the smart speaker ownership among later adopters, will there also be growth for them in using voice for shopping? And I think it comes down to, can they shop from their retailers, right? Like it's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And you've got a large enough body of people who are now using these fandangled devices, but they're not, using it for checking the weather, as opposed to, or they're still trying to figure out how they can incorporate them in their day-to-day lives.
So I think I have two thoughts on this. One, the big gap with online shopping was being able to see the product. And the internet has made that easy with pictures and videos and all sorts of things. And so we've kind of gotten comfortable looking at pictures of our products and looking at reviews and saying, okay, that is the thing we're buying and we're buying it for this much. So to that end, the smart speaker kind of eliminates that ability. You can't see the product, but there is a new type of smart speaker coming out that will have a screen built in. And the use case for this kind of thing is like, put it in your kitchen maybe, or put it in like the living room. And when you ask it to play some music, it'll show you the album art. Or when you're shopping, it'll show you the product.
Right.
And so at least it gives you like a way to look. And I was checking on mine there. Like, it does still require my fingerprint to like approve the purchase. Like, I actually don't know what I might purchase. If I, like, right now I was trying to think, let's buy something, but I couldn't think of what.
I would use it for stuff that I already am familiar with. Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing
like a preset.
where, well, yeah, it's like I'm in a laundry detergent and I always buy the same laundry detergent. So I
Buy
could
my
say,
detergent.
buy my
Yeah.
laundry detergent or my coffee or whatever the case may be.
So that's one thing. I think the devices with the screens are going to facilitate that more. The other thing is I really do think this is like the super long game. I know that my experience getting the Mini, it was like so easy. It's actually easier to put something up on my television with the Mini than it is to use my phone to go to Netflix to cast it, or to the computer. I never use the computer anymore.
Yeah.
Especially because those controls for the show that I'm watching then pop up on my phone like a remote, or you can just yell at the speaker to tell it to stop.
Yeah.
I know,
Stop.
well, because you feel like you're yelling over the TV
Right.
when you talk to it, so you always end up yelling. So I guess what I mean is I think it's a real long game. Like, like I said before, like the smart homes become a thing, and these are lying around, and people get comfortable with them, saying, "Hey, I'm out of detergent," to initiate a purchase of detergent won't be so out there.
Yeah, and I think it is around comfort in using it, because I still find, it's funny you mentioned yelling at your TV, right? Because I still find, even if my iPhone is sitting, 10 inches away from me because it's just on the table, and I want to ask Siri what the weather is, I feel like it feels very unnatural and robotic to say that. And people are always saying, "Okay, assistant," or "Hey, assistant." And it's like, I want you to listen when I want you to listen, and I want you to I want it to feel conversational.
And so those changes are coming too. So both with Alexa and with Google, I've seen like custom hot words are like one of the features.
I think we talked about this on a previous episode where an Alexa was like listening to an entire conversation.
Well,
or maybe I talked about it on a radio show. But
that was a fail on their part. But being able to set whatever one you want, and Alexa also has like a follow up feature. So if you've just done your hot word to enable Alexa, and you've just given it a command, it'll keep listening for another command for a short while after. So you don't have to then say, hey, assistant, again to initiate the second thing you want it to do. And Google had one where I believe Google Assistant now can take 2 commands at once. You can say, what's the weather, and put on my show. And then it'll tell you the weather, and then it'll put on the show. Like, it can take 2. So as the technology gets better, I think we'll probably get rid of the hot word, as creepy as that sounds. And it will just listen when you want it to listen. And I think I even read, and I can't remember where I read it, but like potential for sensors that know when you're looking at it. So you like look over at your Mini like you would look at someone to talk to them, and it knows.
Right.
And so it'll respond to that command versus you not looking at it.
Right.
So I don't know. This is very futuristic and also extremely creepy.
Sure.
To think that it could just be listening whenever.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's where we're headed with these.
Right.
You know,
Interesting.
To the point where they like, I'm picturing them like when you sit down at the booth at the restaurant, there'll be a little speaker there.
Well, it already is happening. Have you read the next
No,
article?
I didn't
Brendan
know. This
Quigley?
is like, I'm a futurist.
There we go. The source on this one, this is my very next article, is from Mobile Marketer.
I'm a genius.
You're
I'm just saying I'm a
genius.
genius.
Yeah. Restaurant-goers are turning to voice platforms for more dining information. Now, I need to segue this. We have said this before, where Domino's has found themselves, their tech department is bigger, their IT and tech department is bigger than the rest of the organization.
Yes.
They see themselves as a tech company first.
And can I butt in here with an IFT story?
Sure.
Domino's will let you set up a custom order in IFT, which is the If This Then That website, which means literally anything could trigger a pizza order for you.
Right.
Every time a certain tweet happens, every time
Yeah.
your lights turn on, every time. So
Wow.
think of the practical joke potential for a friend
That
if you
could be
could get
fun.
into their IFT account.
That would be fun. So, so now more and more restaurants are looking to be or are wanting to be a tech company, and this is kind of it's a 2-part article or story. There was a study that was done that's published on Mobile Marketer, but it was also in response to a Bloomberg article where that talks about some of the things that Denny's and Wendy's and those companies are doing. So here it is in brief. A growing number of consumers are using the voice assistants that we've been talking about to seek information about where to dine. According to the survey by Yext, 4 out of 5 respondents already use their voice device to search for a restaurant by particular attributes, such as type of food or hours of operation. Additionally, 61% of consumers indicated that they were interested in using voice search to get directions to a restaurant, of course. The survey also found that 55% of respondents would use voice to initiate a phone call to a restaurant, and 47% would use voice to gather ratings or reviews about the restaurant. Yext found that 45% of respondents would make a reservation with voice to search if that service were offered, and they polled 1,000 U.S. adults who have asked a restaurant-related question using voice-enabled services like Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant. So,
I think it's taken us a long time to get to this point. But I totally agree. Like, I trust the phone number when you do like a Google search and the little panel comes up on the right with the information about
the knowledge app.
I trust that knowledge section more than I trust the Google search.
Yeah.
To the point where, depending on the client, I sometimes recommend to not try to fight for number 1 placement. Try to make sure you have your listing claimed.
Yeah.
Because I don't look at if the right restaurant comes up on the right, that's where I'm getting
That's
my
all
info.
you're looking at.
I don't care.
Yeah, and that info is really being curated from a whole bunch of different sources. It's Google's, like, you can't hack into that. You can't buy that knowledge panel.
Yeah, the owner of the restaurant can set it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the key takeaway is from this article, is that even a small business, whether you're a restaurant or not, you should be considering, but particularly if you're a restaurant, a marketing strategy for voice assistants. And that's making sure, knowing that this is how people are interacting with your business, making sure that your listing is correct, making sure that your hours are correct, making sure that, your address is there, your phone number is there, your website is there, that if you're a Mexican restaurant, that you've identified you're a Mexican restaurant versus an Italian or whatever. Go ahead.
No, I said the same thing for AR. It's like, what can small businesses do to prepare for AR? It's not necessarily making an AR app. It's making sure that the data that AR apps might lean on is available. And listings on Bing, listings on Google, listings on Yelp, those are the places where this information's being pulled from to be used in these apps. So Google Assistant uses the knowledge graph, Google's knowledge graph, to pull the information. So when someone says, call this restaurant, it's going to get the number from that spot in Google. So easy peasy. What I think is this is only going to increase to the point where the bookings will be coming in automatically through voice apps. And so it's easy to prepare, in my opinion.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be a high cost thing. It is totally free, other than a little bit of sweat equity to claim your listing. I did it for a client just last week, actually. And, I was at their location in their place of business, and Google phones you and gives you a robocall, gives you a 6-digit PIN code that you enter in on the computer at the same time you click those buttons. So that's really all that it takes to verify that you own the listing or to claim your listing. And we've helped other clients claim listings that were claimed by other people because of, staffing and attrition and ownership changes. It can be done, and to work through that to make sure that that's accurate. That's probably the quickest, easiest takeaway for anybody to do. But then secondary to that, and again, particularly if you're a restaurant, you might want to set up so that your business can be part of the, open table, so that people can make make reservations for your restaurant through open table, so that they can ask their assistant. So open table is already kind of primed into the voice assistant. They're the ones who have invested in that infrastructure. But if you have open table hooked into your site, then it say, hey, assistant, make me a reservation for 2:00 tomorrow at XYZ restaurant for 2 people. And that can come up and do that for you as well. So to leverage that technology as people are using it, because that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like it.
You would like being able to make reservations?
Yeah. I remember the first time I bought movie tickets on my phone, and I skipped the line. And I skipped the line for like the little kiosk they had, and went to like this little machine around the corner no one was using, and scanned my phone and printed my tickets.
And often you're doing it while you're standing in line.
And I was like, this is amazing.
Like you just like, oh, let's see, boom, boom, and off you go.
Loved it. Loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
You could even skip the paper, just scan my phone.
Scan the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's voice technology in a nutshell. I don't know if I've got anything else since you've predicted my last article. That's it. So on behalf of the Marketing Podcast, I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
Thank you so much for listening.